In 2014, I started dating my husband, and I was feeling quite high value at the time, right? And like many of us do at the beginning of a relationship, I was focused on making a good impression and putting my best foot forward. My vibe was high. So for the first 3 years, I experienced the benefits of being a high value woman. I was feeling cherished by my dream man. He was making grand gestures towards me, and I was living that fairy tale I had dreamed of as a little girl. The problem is I was doing this completely unconsciously and with zero knowledge of what it meant to be a high value woman. I was just winging it, quote unquote, being myself, right? And what happened is years 4 to 6 in my relationship, things started to go downhill. And I didn't realize I had been, being high value in the beginning. So I didn't even realize that along the way, I stopped being high value. And this lack of awareness and knowledge put us on shaky ground as a couple. And instead of being high value, I started becoming needy and insecure and resentful and frustrated. And I had stopped doing a lot of the things I liked doing because I was just focused now on our family, the stresses of daily life, and especially what felt like a crumbling relationship. So we weren't communicating as well as we used to, and we argued a lot. I was scared. I was frustrated. Like I said, I was feeling resentful, and I was even feeling uncertain about our future together. If luckily for you, you haven't reached your breaking point like I did, I want to help you avoid that scenario. And if you're feeling like in it right now, I want you to find hope again, that there is hope to get out of it, right? And you can turn things around. My goal for today is to share with you what it means to be high value and share 5 traits that you can start embodying today. So what does it mean to be high value? Let's start with a definition of a high value woman. A high value woman has high self-esteem, knows her worth, stands up for herself, embraces her femininity, and possesses, wow, I can't even say that word, a high level of emotional intelligence. So enough with the fluff, enough with the intros. Let's talk about these 5 traits. Trait number 1 is going to be, self-esteem. As I do more of these, I imagine my handwriting is going to get much better. So a high value woman has high self-esteem, and self-esteem is the foundation of how you see yourself and how you project that image to the world. And my favorite definition of self-esteem is from John Gray, the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I love that relationship book. It was like a trend, was it like in the 90s or something? It was like super popular, but it's got some great insights in there. And I was actually listening to a podcast that John Gray was on, and he simply defined self-esteem and self-confidence as knowing you're going to be okay. And I thought that was just so simple, yet so profound and so powerful. And that couldn't be a more important belief to hold on to when you're dating. And also when you're in a relationship and you feel on shaky ground. This confidence is magnetic. And when you truly believe in yourself, you naturally draw in others who share this positive view of life that you have. And it not only affects how others perceive you, but also how you handle the challenges and even the triumphs in your relationship, right? So high self-esteem influences every interaction, making your relationship more fulfilling and just your life in general more balanced. Now, remember, building self-esteem is a gradual process, so don't, be too hard on yourself. If you do feel like right now self-esteem is something you struggle with, that is something that you work on constantly. And if I can offer a suggestion here or something you can start implementing today after this masterclass, is to really start by acknowledging your strengths, celebrating your achievements, no matter how small they may seem. All right, that's a great exercise of self-reflection. So, take out your journal, put 15 minutes aside to just journal of some of the things, you've accomplished in your life. What are some of these big challenges that you've overcome where now you see at the end of the day, you're okay. You made it through and you're actually stronger for it. All right. And most importantly, when you're dating, right, and even in a relationship, just when it comes to self-esteem, one thing I always recommend women do or not do in this case is never devalue yourself or self-deprecate. All right. So I had a client who was dating this guy and they were flirting by text. They were planning to see each other again soon. And she made some sort of joke about her appearance. She was just trying to be funny and show like the humorous side to her. But there was an awkward moment in the exchange because of this. All right. So just remember, you're like a goddess. You're awesome. So never ever self-deprecate, even if it's playful or simply meant, like I said, to showcase like a good sense of humor. All right. That's something you can do right now to really help you stay in your high value goddess self. So just small steps like this can significantly impact your perception of yourself over time. And like I said, high self-esteem isn't something that's going to happen overnight. And it's also not about becoming perfect. So don't put that pressure on yourself. It's really just about valuing yourself despite your imperfections. And like I said earlier, knowing that you're going to be okay. So it's really just about having the confidence or the confidence, and even the courage to go out there and experience life and just knowing that you're going to get through it, right? And embracing who you are while you do it so that you can project that, onto the world. This is actually going to tie into our next trait, which is equally important for personal growth overall, right? And relationship success or dating success. So number 2, a high value woman knows her self-worth. So number 2, self-worth. Now, what do we mean by that? All right. So if you think of it in general, right, things that are high value in the world are rare and unique. And I know it sounds really cheesy to say that we are all rare and unique, but at the end of the day, we all are. We all are snowflakes, all right? And the high value woman knows this. She also has a deep understanding that her value is intrinsic and not dependent on external validation, right? So not necessarily based on the response she's currently getting from the men she's meeting or necessarily from the response she's getting from her partner if they're on shaky ground right now, okay? So she's not seeking or needing that approval or affirmation from others because she already has validated herself. A high-value woman recognizes that a relationship should also be a complement to her life, not a necessity. So you're not looking for validation or self-worth from being with a man. She understands that a man is a bonus and a wonderful addition to her already fulfilling life. This mindset is going to be crucial because it shifts the focus from dependency. And I just did a whole live on YouTube with my relationship coach friend, Ellie, where we talked about emotional dependence, right? So when we have a higher level of self-worth, we can shift this dependency from just appreciating this other person that we have to share our life with, all right? Or looking for that person we want to share our life with. So like, for example, consider how powerful it is to say, I don't need my partner. I can support myself financially, emotionally, spiritually, physically, right? I want my partner in my life because I desire him. And this distinction is what's going to help maintain a healthy dynamic in the relationship where both partners contribute to each other's happiness rather than depending on each other for their self-worth. And when you know your worth, you naturally attract partners who respect and appreciate you. All right. You're going to start seeing that happen more often. And the self-awareness is going to foster healthier, more fulfilling relationships where there's mutual respect and understanding, okay? And it's going to set the standard for how you expect to be treated when you have self-worth. And it's going to align you with people who share your values. So knowing your worth allows you to actually establish and maintain boundaries, which it's a good tie-in for what we're going to talk about in number 3. And it's going to help you make choices in dating and relationships that reflect your values, all right? And engage in relationships that enhance your life rather than define it. Trait number 3, a high-value woman stands up for herself, okay? I'm going to use the word boundaries here because we're going to say they're similar in this case. So the high-value woman stands up for herself, and this involves having strong boundaries and not settling for less than she deserves or desires, right? A high value woman is clear about her needs, her expectations, and she's not afraid to communicate them. Standing up for yourself means being assertive without being aggressive. So that's an important distinction here. It's about expressing your thoughts and your feelings openly and honestly, while also being respectful of others. And it's this kind of communication that's going to foster stronger, more authentic connections in your relationships. So for instance, if something is bothering you, a high value woman will address it directly rather than let it fester. And she will also articulate her boundaries and expectations in a loving yet firm manner, ensuring that her needs are understood and respected. So this is where there's a little bit of a I would say a fine line here, where we want to make sure that our communication is clear and firm in the sense that, we don't feel wobbly with what we desire, and we can communicate it that way without making sound like an order or a punishment, okay? We want to keep that softness, which ties into another trait we're going to talk about soon. The other thing about boundaries and standing up for yourself is that boundaries are meant to be followed through on, all right? So you're not just stating what you want, but when it doesn't happen, okay, you actually follow through with what you set out for yourself and what you said you were going to do. So I actually have a lot of thoughts on boundaries. We're not going to go super deep in boundaries today. I've talked a lot about boundaries in my Happily Ever After bootcamp and also on my YouTube channel. So like I said, you can go dive deep into those videos after the class today. But one of the important distinctions here, or one of the things to remember, is that there are internal boundaries and there are external boundaries. And internal boundaries are the ones that you set with yourself. So a lot of times I see, women talking about the boundaries that set, and usually they're external, right? They're setting boundaries and expressing them maybe with the men that they're dating, right? Or with their husband. A lot of the work I suggest you start working on, and they will have both will have a big, profound effect on how things turn out and what you experience in your love life. But when you really start focusing on your internal boundaries, that's also going to help build your confidence and, your self-esteem, like we talked about, and even your self-worth. And these are boundaries like standards for thoughts that you have in your mind. Like if something happens and you default to thinking the worst when you're dating someone, or, someone ghosts you or takes a long time to text back, like what are you telling yourself in your head? What if you set a boundary with yourself that you weren't going to let that, ruin your day or make you feel anxious, right? Those of you with an anxious attachment style, right? What if you set that boundary? That is a boundary. A boundary isn't always something necessarily with someone else, or that you have to express to someone else and get their involvement in, or whatever that looks like for you, okay? That is a boundary. I'm not going to let myself freak out when my husband doesn't take out the trash when he was supposed to. And now I'm stuck doing it, right? I'm going to set that boundary with myself that I'm not going to let it freak me out. And that's not to say that you gloss over things, right? It doesn't mean that having strong boundaries means you're just going to tolerate bad behavior or settle for less. It just means that you're not going to let yourself, and we'll talk a bit about this in another trait, right? Just let yourself get overly influenced by external circumstances, right? You have standards for yourself and how you want to show up. You are high value. You are high value. Tell yourself that. Just start with that after the class today. Keep telling yourself, I'm high value. Having said that, having strong boundaries also means being willing to walk away from situations or people who don't respect them. Now, this is a lot of times when I talk about boundaries, especially external boundaries, is because you guys are far down in the relationship, or maybe the guy you're dating is just way far down the road, okay? At that point, if all else fails, you've got to be willing to, walk away, perhaps, depending on your situation, or take more drastic action, all right? But just make sure you're not confusing boundaries with control, right? Or punishment or ultimatums. Those are often confused. The high value woman can discern between all of that. So it's not about confrontation, not about control, not about punishment. It's really about maintaining your integrity and staying true to your values at the end of the day. So let's talk about number 4. So trait number 4, are we still going to see? Okay, I have some room. Trait number 4, a high value woman embraces her femininity, okay, or her feminine energy. Feminine energy. Can I read this? Yes. I love talking about feminine energy, so let's talk about it. So this means being in touch with the qualities of intuition, nurturing, empathy, and also, most importantly, being open to receiving from life, and in this case, specifically from men. And these qualities are incredibly powerful and attractive to the men in your life. So many of us, especially high-achieving women that I work with lots of ambition in their careers or in their businesses, or in the corporate world, and also mothers, right? We can fall into masculine energy really quickly because that's kind of the vibe that we're in those worlds, right? And masculine energy is going to be about reaching goals and pushing for outcomes and getting results and managing and directing. And that's fine. But in the context of relationships, we want to be careful with that. So if this resonates with you, let me know in the comments. Do you feel like you're often, striving for things, trying to, hoping things will change and go a certain way, and really trying to kind of manage outcomes in your relationship, right? That was me. I will lift my hand right now. I will comment in my own comments. That was me. I totally fell into that category. And it's the same thing with mothering, right? Surprisingly, there's an important distinction between being nurturing and mothering. And nurturing is going to lean more towards being supportive and nourishing at various levels, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, whereas mothering is more about, making sure the day goes as planned, or that people are on time, and making sure the rules are followed. That's more masculine energy. So there's going to be more of a rigidity with mothering, and feminine is more about flow. And it's fine to have both. We all have both, men and women, because this is about energy. So let me clarify that. This is about energy, not about gender. All right. But in a relationship, you really want to pay attention to that energy, because when you have both, when both are effectively used, that's when you have the magnetism in the relationship, and that attraction and that polarity, which makes your relationship super delicious and gives you your happily ever after, which, if you follow my page, if you watch my videos, that is what you're after, right? So when it comes to love, and especially if you're dating and you desire a masculine man, being in your feminine is going to help you have that relationship that you dreamed of as a little girl. And embracing your femininity, by the way, doesn't mean that you're conforming to stereotypes. It's not being about, this new trad wife movement, right? If that's not what you envision yourself, that's fine. It doesn't mean you can't be feminine. And it's also not about being weak or submissive. A lot of women, especially high-achieving women, and that was me, was scared that, if I start being more feminine, then I might be, perceived as a pushover or, a doormat or whatnot. But that's not true, because feminine energy traits are incredibly powerful, and they're actually going to add a lot of depth to your interactions as a couple. So really, if you don't feel emotionally connected to your partner right now, getting back into your feminine is really going to help him open up and bring down his walls so that you guys can connect more strongly, okay? Get back to that place. And being more intuitive is going to allow you also to connect at a deeper level, while all these nurturing qualities that we talked about will help you build a more supportive and caring relationship. It's funny, maybe I'll post about this. I think I was gonna do a reel, because there was someone who was posting in a Facebook group about how she's struggling with her husband. Her husband gets angry a lot, and she wasn't sure what to do, and I forget all the details of the post. I'm gonna do a reel about that. And anyway, so I commented. Everyone's giving all this advice, and I'm like, well, what does your husband, get angry about? And it turns out her husband would get angry because he felt that she wasn't she didn't have his back. And, sometimes there'd be in situations and he'd get, angry or upset with someone else, and she didn't agree that he was upset, and she kind of expressed that or whatnot. And you know what? And I get that would just foster the anger. I can just imagine, right? In the relationship. And it's interesting because her husband told her specifically, I don't feel like you have my back. Okay, so she knows exactly what the problem is. And she was saying, well, he's wrong and whatnot. And one of the important feminine trait qualities I want to anchor in with trait number 4, feminine energy, is when you're in your feminine energy, you can be, more supportive in your relationship, right? Okay, well, why is this person, what makes you upset at this person? What's going on? How can you support your husband? Sure, maybe he's right. Maybe he's wrong, right? Maybe he is, being angry for no reason at this other person or whoever it is, right? Maybe he is, but you're his partner. What if you were on his team? Even if you didn't agree with him, how can you be supportive? How can you show compassion in that moment? How can you show empathy? Right? All these feminine traits, which brings me to empathy, right? Being empathetic in your feminine energy enhances your ability to understand your partner and relate to the experiences that he's going through. And that's going to make him head over heels with you, right? How to get a man obsessed with you. Show him that you're on his side. Show him that you understand him, or that you're interested in understanding him. Okay, dating ladies, start doing that. Start doing that on your dates. Also, by embracing your femininity, you also set a standard for how you wish to be treated, okay? And you attract men who can step up to that. So you actually also benefit from being in your feminine energy. All right, so trait number 5. Let's talk about trait number 5, emotional intelligence. I love this. I love this topic. It's near and dear to my heart. I can't speak and write, so give me a second here. I am thinking actually of doing some sort of, well, let me know in the comments if this would be helpful. So I'm thinking of doing maybe some sort of PDF handout of this masterclass, something that you guys could download and keep, some sort of cheat sheet after with the different traits I'm talking about today. So if you think that would be useful, if you're yes, I would love that, I need that, let me know in the comments and I will put something together for you guys. All right. So the high value woman is also emotionally and relationally intelligent. I'm going to focus today on emotional intelligence, but that simply means, she works on her emotional regulation, and you're very intentional about the dynamic you contribute to the relationship when you're being a high value. All right. So this really involves understanding, managing your emotions, as well as recognizing and empathizing with the emotions of others. And this is what's going to really help you navigate your dating life and your relationships with grace and compassion. So I love to share that my husband and I are two extremely emotional beings. If you're into astrology, he's a Scorpio, I'm Cancer, we're both water signs. So there is a ton of depth in what we feel, and it comes and goes just like waves. All right. And my emotional intelligence, or lack thereof, at the time is definitely what contributed to that rough patch when I was dating my husband. And my favorite analogy, my husband rolls his eyes whenever I talk about the story of just this metaphor to help you understand emotional intelligence and what it's like when it's not regulated, is the story about the man and the horse. And I shared this in my live on YouTube yesterday. But basically the story goes, there's this man walking down this gravel path, and he can hear a horse galloping behind him, full speed. And the man turns around and sees another man or another person, could be a girl, let's say it's a girl, let's say it's a woman. She's on the horse. Yeah, let's make it a woman so we can relate, okay? And she's on the horse, and the horse is galloping, going crazy down this gravel path, and the man's oh my God, turns around, and the man asks the woman, where are you going? And she says, I don't know, ask the horse. So a high value woman is aware of her feelings. She can identify them, she can label them, and she can manage them effectively, right? So in this analogy, in this example, she's not just letting the horse carry her away. And I'm not talking about a horse here, right? I'm talking about emotions. So she doesn't let her emotions carry her away. And this self-awareness, this work like on your emotions and understanding them is going to allow you to respond thoughtfully to situations rather than react impulsively. And I just know too well what that can do when you're dating someone and even when you're in a long-term relationship. This is like forever work. And this is really the aspect of high value that I continue to work on the most. You'll see that some of these traits, you're going to be like, I've got this one nailed down. This one, not so much. Or this one is maybe more challenging for me, right? But being emotionally intelligent is going to enhance your ability to connect with a man on a deeper level. And it's going to help you resolve your conflicts with a lot more empathy and ease and grace and wisdom. And it's going to really help you build that lasting bond, all right? Or that happily ever after, like I always talk about. And the high value woman, she actually views her emotions as a superpower, right? Like something that can help guide her rather than as obstacles that can control her or derail her from her love life. Okay, so emotions are your superpower. Remember, emotions are your superpower as a woman. A high value woman also doesn't let her emotions control her, which I kind of talked about already, right? She responds to life and love instead of reacting. Responding, reacting. Important distinction here when we're talking about emotional intelligence. Also, another important distinction for you to remember, observing emotions rather than absorbing emotions. All right. I have a ton of videos on emotional detachments, emotional regulation on my YouTube channel. So again, if you want to dive deeper after this and binge,